treat Hyun's wounds thanks to the title of the last survivor, after his endurance dropped to 10%. He gets up saying that he will return this to that damn demon. The system informs him that he has completed the mission of the first night in hell, and will present him with a silver box as a gift. As compensation for the difficulty level that conflicts with his level, the reward will be doubled and the silver box will be transformed into a B box, telling him that he can now use the return stone until the next mission and the remaining time. It has been 14 days since the leadership issued a strong light to open his eyes after that, and he returned in a rainy atmosphere. He looks around him to scream, saying that he did it and was able to return. He grabs the necklace and raises his hand to break it to remember everything that happened to him. This is the opportunity he wanted to change his decision after that. Yumi sees him and begins screaming, calling his name. She runs towards him to check on him and takes off her coat to cover him because the rain contains a large amount of mana and it could kill him since he is a normal human. He looks at her in surprise, so she tells him that they have to move first. After she takes him to a safe place, she ties him up in this strange way. He calls her to give him the mana decontaminant so he can wash himself with it just in case. He says he's fine and doesn't need you to yell at him because he takes things lightly. Even if he had a job where he had to touch the remains of the crystal algae, he wouldn't be able to grieve while he's dead. Then he apologizes, saying he'll use it. After washing himself with the mana detox, he comes out asking what today's date is, and she says it's the 11th of September. Is shocked by what he heard. She asks him what happened. She couldn't contact him for 2 days, so she ended up working alone. He thinks in surprise that it was only 2 days, even though it felt like years. He wonders what was in that industrial complex. He is sure that he was at his house before he went there. He notices that she looked at him talking to herself, saying that she has to behave, saying that he can't stand like this, so she will go out to buy him some clothes. He asks her about his clothes, so she says that it is impossible for him to wear them, as they are dirty and also torn, and she goes saying that she will be back soon, so he stays in his place, and as soon as she leaves, he opens the storeroom. So he opens the box. God tells him the system that the quality of rewards will increase because of the title of Good Luck rank SSS. A group of cards comes out to choose one, and the rest are burned, and it was a legendary skill. The battle assistant is surprised that he got a legendary skill. There are only 7 people in the world who have a legendary skill, and by getting it this skill, he is now the 8th holder of a legendary skill. He says that its name indicates its work, and he tries to use it to enter 2 days with clothes for him to wear, to be surprised by him hitting the air. She asks him what he is doing, then she says that she will show that she did not see anything. They sit down to tell him that she had to take him to the hospital, but he seems fine in general. Strange, so she brings him to her house, saying that he doesn't have to worry about German poisoning if he has any powers, and asks him why he works as a collector if he has any skill. She says this while he is shocked that the size of the clothes she brought fit him perfectly. He says that it hasn't been long since he got it. He asks her if she is looking for something, and she says yes, she is looking for crystal moss. He asks if he can show her this. She asks him what it is. He opens the store. They say he managed to get it, and he is not sure how much it is worth. She is amazed by what she sees. He says that this is a kilo of crystal moss, and since she is in the middle of her research into the crystal moss, she must know more than him. She screams at the top of her voice, saying that this is impossible. She grabs his hand to see it up close and asks him where he got it. He asks her if this is important. She answers him yes, as it is not easy to obtain very pure crystal moss, and this is not. With only 4 stars, or at least 5, he calls her and says that she has become a university student just to complete her research. She answers him yes. He says that he has decided something first. He has no intention of giving it to her. In return, he will tell her how she can get it from him. She asks this scoundrel how, and he says that he wants to help her to know how he can sell it. She says this is ridiculous. With this purity and size, you will need more than 1 or 2 documents. He asks her if the size is the problem. She answers him immediately. If it is small, it will be easy to sell it, but this is not the problem. She is surprised when he solves the problem and divides it in half. She rains down a torrent of insults and beatings on him, telling her that he has others. And what is bigger than her in size too, to stop hitting him and cursing him, and ask him if he is honest. He confirms this, he is more of her, and asks if she thinks she can sell her now. She answers yes. He says that this is great, but he has two conditions. The first is that she cannot tell anyone where she gets the crystal moss, and the second is that she does not. She can also tell them who is selling it to her. She says that if this is the case, it will be better than seeing her split in half with extravagance. He asks her about what extravagance. She shouts that he does not know anything. This degree of purity can only be obtained in the first hall. It is of high quality, of the crystal rank, and can be considered a blank check, and now these precious crystals are being smashed to sell. He says he understands and is sorry for her. He says to himself that there is no difference between them. He says that he will decide what to do next, depending on how successful she is in selling. She asks him if he is leaving. He takes his clothes and answers her with a deadline. She asks him to go to buy clothes together tomorrow and sleep here, and after that night, I think I don't need to explain what happened. She says she will go to the meeting place that was agreed upon with the buyer, and after a week Hyun decides to accompany her to see this person who is buying crystals from her. She says that the matter is not serious. He says to himself that despite he was the one who asked her to do this, but there are a lot of men who are about to lose everything to make a deal like this. She says he watches a lot of drama series to get him back on the right path, and while he was saying that these men want to buy the rest of the crystal algae at a higher price, so it's suspicious, he watches someone looks at them to say that he is happy that he accompanied her to make him think, and points to the old man who is reading in his book, welcoming him and saying that she came with a partner today to reassure Hyun that it was not that person. The old man stands to shake his hand, saying that he is happy to meet him, and introduces himself by his name. Park Ho-soo to introduce himself by his name as well, and says that he is strong just looking at his grip, and if he attacks him he might not be able to win against him. The strongest title system in hell automatically activates, so Hyun says he won't do this. He weighs and checks the crystals. He says he will deposit the money in the same account as every time he stands, after that paying his respects to Kong Hyun, wishing to see him again, so Hyun feels with his strength. Human says that this is strange, as he has never done this before. Thus, Hugh is surprised by what she said, and wonders if he knew that the owner of the crystal moss was thinking about this, while Human mocks him. What he expected, she hits his back and asks him about the reason for his sadness. This is the kind of deal he wanted. She asked him to tell her with his other thoughts. For example, how does he feel after seeing $1 million entered into his account? We go to the park and hear someone ask him if things went well. He confirms that he has already obtained all the goods in the market. This person looks at the crystals and says that if he can collect them, they look very large. He wonders about how he will trade with such things randomly in the market. He grabs one of them, and it has drops of blood on it. He calls Park Y and asks him for his opinion. He says that it is pure crystal moss that can only be found in the 5-star Delice, so he must be a very strong hunter. He is also alone. The unknown person says that if he can, from hiding himself and discovering 5-star corridors, he may be from a foreign country's guild, but there is no reason for them to care about Korea. He asks him how the person he did business with was. He says that someone came with her as a partner, but he needs to monitor her a little more. He tells him that with this level of goods he is sure he can handle the tough trials, then praises Park, then wonders how strong this person must be to be able to collect this kind of crystal moss alone in this kind of dungeon. Park says he is at least at the level of a leader, asking him to do it, investigating his university research assistant for 2 days and her partner. Park asks Commander Lee GT to leave the matter to him. After several days in hell, we see Yoon training to increase his strength. He stops after 150 reps. He receives a notification that his strength limit has increased. He says that if he were not in hell, he would have done 1,000 additional lifts, and that his exertion with little effort puts him in this state. He asks about the remaining time for the mission, and the system tells him that there are only 18 hours left. Alcalada sees that he began to understand some things from his comings and goings to this place, including that the time he spends in hell is equal to the time that will pass in reality. And the time of the mission passes whether he is in hell or in reality. But there is one problem, which is that his location changes every time. In which he returns from hell, he can understand and absorb everything, but he does not understand the reason for changing his place every time. So he decides to stop thinking about the reason. He takes a look at the battle assistant skill, which improves the accuracy of its users by registering and controlling abilities. In addition to that, it can be used to anticipate the opponent's movement. He says that in games, the assistant is something like cheating or something like that, and that having a cheating system like this as a skill means that no one will be able to survive here without resorting to using a skill like that. He steps in, activating the battle assistant, hits the punching bag, and repeats the matter with a barrage of punches. He is surprised. From what he sees in front of him, his blows seem to be concentrated in one area, and the last blow toward the punching bag. He wonders if it was the skill that recorded all his attacks in one powerful attack, and he says that it is extremely wonderful. The new mission begins with the title, Friend of the Beginner, in which he is required to defeat 5 scarecrows. The beginner gets angry because he describes him as a beginner. They say that he is in the 7th level, and he asks him for a beginner's mission. Then he says that he does not remember seeing any scarecrow wearing his shirt, saying that he needs to raise his level so he can start moving. As soon as he started moving, a white mirage appeared, leading him to the place until he reached a dark basement, which he entered. He said it's like a horror movie watching 5 pieces of blood to wonder what they are, and whether these are beginner scarecrows. He seems to feel some fear of them. He fails to know their level and begins to imagine if they will suddenly move without warning. He grabs a wooden plank and stops it as a shield for him, saying to be careful. Beware of any possible reaction. He takes out one of the arrows of hell and throws it at one of the bloods and hides, waiting for what will happen. After a few seconds, nothing happens. He wonders if this is just a stationary blood. He attacks. They say that the matter will be very easy. He directs his fist in the face of number 1, only to be surprised by something that makes him quickly retreat backwards. He says that he punched him as hard as he could, but he felt as if he had just punched the air. Puppet number 1 begins to move, and all the puppets stop after identifying the target and determining the level of fighting at the first level. After seeing their level, he says that they are equal in level. One of the puppets begins to attack, and the rest follow. He notices that they are slower than the goblin he met previously, but they are still at the 7th level, which if you were in the real world, you would be like a bodyguard or a soldier with 5 years of experience. But here you are nothing but a beginner who stands up and says that he will eliminate them and advances, activating the battle assistant skill.